Good evening, Smart Trucking, coming to you live on the air from Northern Ontario. How are you guys all doing today? It's rained here non-stop for about 3 days, but it's better than snow. They're calling for a little snow here tonight. I can hardly believe it, but I can believe it. But we're to the point now where it won't stay long. Hopefully the weather's nicer where you are. You guys picking me up okay? Everybody hear me out there all right? Let me know. Send me a wave. Let me know. Lucifer. Hi, Dad. Hi, Lucifer. How are you doing tonight? Hope you're behaving yourself. Hopefully the weather's better where you are than where we are, but it will improve. There has been an awful lot of talk about this Knight-Swift merger. Excellent. All you guys can hear me. Beautiful. Thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it. There's been an awful lot of talk about this Knight-Swift merger in our industry here the last week or so.
You're too early.
So I just thought we'd talk a little about that tonight. It took me a while to mull over the implications of this merger, the Knight-Swift merger. At first, it didn't really hit me very hard. I thought, oh, that's interesting news. But Lucifer lives in Florida. I wish I lived in Florida. But I had to digest this for a little while, and then I did a little research to find out about this merger. At first, you heard, Swift bought Knight, and then you heard Knight bought Swift. Well, it turns out it truly was a merger. There was a stock swap, no money exchanged hands, but with this merger, it has created what I believe to be the biggest trucking company in North America. And when you think about that, that's really something. How will that impact the industry? How will that impact us as drivers? It's, you wonder why they did it at first. I couldn't understand why they did it. But both companies actually have features that complement the other. Both Knight and Swift bring trucking strengths to the table. Knight is well known for its quality management style. The Knight brothers are sharp guys. They know what they're doing backwards and forwards. So when the Knight brothers have merged with Swift, they've massively increased their fleet size. Now, what has this done for Knight? Knight all of a sudden gains all of the terminals that Swift has. And Swift is huge, and they've got terminals everywhere. So all of a sudden, Knight has access to all these terminals. Swift has access to all these drivers that Swift had and all this equipment that Swift had. So it's a big thing for Knight. It's also a big thing for Swift because while their Swift has been huge, they've had their issues. And now they're bringing on board the Knight brothers to run this whole show. And you just know that as a company, Swift will improve through this. And they'll gain access to markets that Knight had a good lock on, and certainly it'll work the other way around. They'll have access to each other's freight. They'll grow. It's interesting to note that a lot of economists noted that this will help both these major carriers battle the ELD problem that they're anticipating, and they expect it will help them with their driver retention because they'll be able to do more terminal-to-terminal work, more short-haul work, get their guys back, get their guys home, and help keep their drivers. That's what they're anticipating anyway. We'll have to see how it works out in the wash. But all of a sudden, you've got a carrier on the marketplace that's virtually twice the size of Schneider. And that's huge. So, what are the implications? But it's interesting, what do you think the implications are going to be for drivers working for Knight and Swift? All of a sudden, these guys, especially the Knight guys, are thrown into a pool of a huge amount of drivers. So as as a person, that's just gone out the window. Those guys are all just numbers now. So if you think it was hard to get home before for those guys, man, it's going to be damn near impossible now, because those guys will be shuffling freight around, because that's their job. They'll be shuffling freight all over the place. But it's not their job to keep the drivers happy. Their job is to shuffle freight. So you won't be a name, you'll be a number, and you're one of a number of, it's a huge number that you're part of. So as to the quality of your treatment as a driver, boy, that's going to be interesting to see how they work that out. Now, the Knight brothers are sharp guys. If they can solve that problem, they will. I want to leave California, and I heard over the road it's really bad. So I want to ask someone like you, so much experience, what is your favorite U.S.? And I lost the rest of the message. I'm sorry. The messages roll through quickly here, so you're best to keep it short if you can. But yeah, you'll definitely be a number if you're working for Knight Swift. And imagine as well, if you will, Swift had a certain reputation for being, how can I say this politely? They had a reputation for having the worst drivers on the highway, the most poorly trained guys on the road. So all of a sudden you throw these Knight guys in with that group and you think, holy cow, how are these Knight guys taking that? I imagine some of them are embarrassed. I don't know, but it's something to think about anyway.
Question from Raymond. He wants to know if this merger will make them as big as J.B. Hunt.
They will be bigger than J.B. Hunt. Raymond. They'll be much bigger. They're huge. They're bigger than Schneider. They're huge. Biggest carrier in North America, as far as I can tell. Where in the U.S. would you live and work? I'm kind of partial to Nebraska and Wyoming myself, but that's a little off topic. We're talking about the Swift merger, the Swift Knight merger. So yeah, it's huge when you think about it. Now, it's interesting to note both these companies are publicly traded companies. So both companies had a stock boost on the day of the merger, and then both companies experienced a stock drop the day after. Now, what's also interesting is that these big companies, Schneider recently went to a publicly traded company last month, and they do that to raise money. Knight and Swift have merged for economic reasons as well, but the truth of the matter is that the truckload sector of the trucking industry, which is what both these guys concentrate on, the truckload sector is shrinking. They've got overcapacity, is the term the trucking industry uses, and what that means is truly there are more trucks than there are loads. So here these guys have combined to try to exchange drivers and customers and stuff, but truly they're struggling to survive. And that's truly why Schneider's has gone public, because Schneider's wants a cash influx. That's why they're trading publicly now. And these guys have merged because they're losing market share, and they're trying to do something to keep their shareholders entertained and invested in their industry. But the bottom line is the truckload carrier market is shrinking, and what's interesting is it's shrinking due to online shopping, if you can believe it. So many people now are online shopping that it's affecting the way freight moves. And that's incredible when you think about it, that you could shrink the industry that way. And but that's what the economists, and I've got three different authorities on this that I researched: Market Realist, Forbes, and the Business Insider, and they all say that the market is shrinking and these guys are struggling to survive, and this is their solution to surviving. Now, certainly, both of these carriers cite Walmart as one of their biggest customers. So certainly their big customers will be inspired by this, because Walmart, someone that's huge like that, will think, well, this guy's got way more trailers than he used to have. That'll be a good thing for us. We could move way more freight with Knight Swift and not have to search for other outside carriers. Knight Swift can handle, a large chunk of our business. So it's something to attract the customers that they already have and satisfy them, and it will attract other huge customers that they may be trying to get on board. That's a selling feature for this company now, that they have so many power units and so many terminals.
Do you think the Knight brothers will clean up the quality of drivers?
That's a really good question.
Repeat it.
I think they're going to have to clean up the quality of drivers because, as I said a few minutes ago, Swift is the butt of jokes for the entire industry. And Swift had trouble getting drivers as it was. So I think one of the biggest things that Knight's going to have to work on is driver retention and cleaning up the act. They're going to have to put way more time into training, particularly the Swift element of their new company, because that reputation that Swift has established is not undeserved. They've been kicking loose guys on the highway that were poorly trained. They've been doing it for years and years, to the point that everybody in the industry knows that. They've become the butt of many, many Swift jokes. And this merger is certainly a good opportunity to quote Swift jokes, but I'm going to try to refrain from that. But yes, absolutely. They're going to need to clean up the quality of their drivers, or they're just going to have the biggest disaster fleet on the road. And you almost want to say, Mr. Trump, don't build the wall yet, because Swift needs way more cheap drivers now that they've grown like this. But you've got to refrain from saying stuff like that. But it's true. They're not known for paying well. They're not known for treating their drivers well. And just about everybody that drives knows this. So they've got to recruit new guys into the industry. If they don't treat these new guys well, those new guys will be gone, and those new guys will go to a better trucking company. Yeah, that's right. If you don't pay the drivers well, you're stuck with young drivers. And it's lawsuit after lawsuit as you get wreck after wreck after wreck. So yeah, Knight's got a big job ahead of them. There's no doubt of that. It turns out that the former CEO and major shareholder still of Swift and the Knight brothers go way back. They've got a history. So the major shareholder trusts these guys. He thinks they can bring the company forward in some aspect, and that's what he's hoping for. That's what all the shareholders are hoping for. But it's interesting that they think that the bigger they get, the more profitable they get. I'm not sure that's going to happen. And that's right too. Even with all this online shopping, this driver writes in, we're still going to need trucks to get it, to where the stuff has got to go, to get the stuff delivered. And that's true too. And we've seen in this industry that the industry is leaning towards short haul stuff because the stuff still needs to get delivered to where it's finally got to go. Shareholders are only hoping for a big payout. Absolutely, that's what buying stock is all about. You buy stock for a good, healthy return. And Swift and Knight are struggling to keep shareholders because the shareholders aren't making big returns. So this merger is an attempt to help satisfy shareholders and speculators and think, yeah, this is a good thing. We'll control more of the market share. We'll keep our money in Knight Swift. So we'll see how it works out. Time will tell. Future will tell. But this bigger is better idea kind of escapes me. And Escor says all the big carriers treat their drivers like crap, and that tends to be true because they lose sight of the fact that these are people driving these trucks. And can you imagine, you've got a family emergency and you've got to get home, and you're in a system with 23,000 trucks. Can you imagine how much you're going to manage or matter to that dispatcher if you've got to get home? Hell, you're going to have to quit to get his attention. Otherwise, you're just a number. So it's going to be a problem for the Knight brothers to solve that. I think they're going to have to increase the pay, but they've driven the freight down so cheap that the profit margin is pennies per mile, And some of that has got to go to their shareholders to satisfy those guys, or they'll pull their money out. They've got a battle on their hands. I don't know, how they're going to manage it or if they will. But as far as the driver's concerned, in the meantime, what is going to attract a driver to this night Swift operation? And they're going to need drivers. They'll lose a whole bunch of guys just through this merger. A whole bunch of night guys are going to go, oh my God, and they'll bail. So they're going to lose drivers. And how is Night Swift going to attract new guys?
James says night customers may not want Swift hauling their freight.
Oh, good point. Good point. Night driver or night companies, night customers may not want Swift drivers hauling their freight. Man, very good point. Very valid. And absolutely right in some cases, I'm sure. They'll lose customers over this deal. That's a good point. It'll be interesting to see, certainly. When I worked for Knight, it was a decent company. It used to be better. It got worse and worse in the last 2 years. I'm not impressed by how they progressed. Jay, that's interesting. And I had always heard good things about Knight. They were a respected company up until the last couple of years, and they started to slide. Knight showed no profit last year, and that'll be one of the biggest points for this merger. The Knight brothers lost money last year, and that was a first for them. Yeah, they could. Chris says they could drive the price even lower to get a bigger slice of the freight. That logic just escapes me, Chris, but you're probably right. That's probably what they'll do. But and they're competing with guys like Werner and Schneider, for instance. Just Cheap Freight Incorporated. Swift has had an incredible amount of wrecks over the years, and it's damaged their reputation severely. Not that Werner hasn't been trying to capture that same title as having the most wrecks for the year, but they've got an uphill battle, that's for sure. Swift does, or Knight does. So it'll be interesting to see if they can find drivers for the rate that they're willing to pay. And can you imagine the wasted waiting time, for instance, now with this new merger? If you're a driver, can you imagine you'll put in a day sitting in front of the shop waiting for an oil change. You'll need binoculars when you go to the trailer yard. You still won't be able to see across the trailer yard. You'll use up all your hours of service just hunting for the trailer you're supposed to pin onto, because they'll be so damn huge. There are going to be inefficiencies in this, left, right, and center. They may drive themselves into the ground. Yeah, that's exactly right. So we'll have to see. But can you imagine working for a carrier that has 23,000 trucks? It'd be the last place I'd want to work anyway. Now, maybe they're desperate for work in Phoenix. I don't know, but we'll see. This merger makes them so big, they're eligible for all sorts of government grants and tax breaks. They'll have political pull, stuff like this. So they're eligible now they're so big they'll be eligible for a Wall Street buyout if they get in financial trouble. It'll be interesting to see anyway.
Mo says, I own a trucking company. I take a load about 80 miles round trip. Somehow Swift takes it for a third of the price. It's sad.
I've had that same experience myself with mega carrier, just chopping the freight rate so badly it's not even worth doing. It's not even worth fighting to get back. You just say, you know what? If you can do it for that kind of money, take it, because I'm not interested. But yeah, it's amazing what they'll haul freight for. But I don't understand their mathematics, but they seem to be doing all right so far. So let them have the freight. No wonder they've got the freight. But let them find the drivers. Let them find 23,000 guys willing to work for peanuts.
Mike says, well, I'm embarrassed. I start at night on Monday.
Mike, don't worry. They'll be bending over backwards to keep you. So just enjoy the ride and see how it's going to be. Knight was a pretty good company. So let's see how it works out. You'll be on the front lines. You can tell us how it's going. Nobody will be better informed on it than you, that's for sure.
Wonder what the OIDA thinks about the merger.
You know what? I don't know what the OIDA thinks. It'll be interesting to see their take on it. The ATA will be doing handsprings. They'll be so happy. But I'll be interested to know what the OIDA thinks. They'll have a realistic perspective on it. So I look forward to hearing their opinion on that.
Jay says, still have fellow drivers who work for Knight and they tell me they're already seeing changes.
Jesus, Jay, I wonder if the changes they're seeing are for the better or for the worse. I'd love to know. But I'm sure there'll be an adjustment period. So you've got to give them some slack. You've got to cut them some slack because the two companies are massive. So I can't imagine what they're going to have to go through to meld properly. But no, I'm sure there'll be some ups and downs in that. But
Dan, the mega carriers have driven the trucking industry downhill.
yes, I agree, Dan. The mega carriers have driven the trucking industry right into the ground as far as we're concerned. So their goal was domination of the freight, and they certainly seem to be well on their way. What they failed to take into account was the fact that they're going to need drivers for these trucks because they have to make so much money to be able to pay the driver well. But maybe that's why everyone's going, oh, autonomous trucks. They think they won't have to pay the drivers, and that's how they're going to solve the cheap freight problem. I don't know. But well, it'll be interesting to see what they have up their sleeve, if anything, or if they've just got more money than brains. They're about to have 50,000 truck. The merger gives them 23,000 trucks and 77,000 trailers. That's what I said about the trailer drop yard. You'll need binoculars. You still won't be able to see your trailer in that mess. You imagine
An article in Transportation Topics, and a guy is applauding Kevin Knight, saying the merger is just what the trucking industry needs.
Well,
Says who?
yeah, I'd love to know how he figures that that's just what the trucking industry needs. How is that going to improve the trucking industry? If you say it's just what the trucking industry needs, why is that? How is that going to satisfy us? Yeah, with the mega carriers' freight being so cheap, it makes it almost impossible to become an owner-operator. Well, it's not impossible, but it's damn difficult. You've got to find a niche market that Swift isn't interested in, basically. Something that's too difficult for their meatheads to manage, like reefer freight or something, I don't know. But yeah, you're going to have to look out for niches that the average guy cannot do. Flatbed, there's another good niche. Flatbed, I think, will be the best trucking for drivers. Yeah, flatbed, good niche probably. So we'll have to see. I don't think Swift is into flatbeds, as far as I know. Time to get your tanker endorsement from Nate. Yep, I don't believe they're in tankers yet, although Schneider is. But yeah, and I did tanker work for about 8 years total, I guess, and I found it did well. Swift does flatbed, according to Greg. Is that right? Oh God. Swift has a flatbed division out west, mainly from Dana. No kidding. Well, they'll just get into anything to try to make a buck, I guess. But so it'll be interesting to see where this merger takes them and how it affects the industry overall. Certainly, they are going to be the biggest carrier, as far as I can tell. But the biggest carrier is going to need the biggest amount of manpower, the most drivers. Will they be able to get drivers to fill those trucks? I think that's going to be a huge battle for them. Nate saw a Swift car hauler. Good Lord. Swift has covered for sheetrock covered wagons. No kidding. Didn't know. So they're doing everything. The Swift cars are in such crappy states. Almost dropped one there. Swift flatbed's scary. Oh, excuse me. I know, scary. Schneider has sold their flatbed division to Maverick. Is that right? I didn't know that. Maverick's an up-and-coming thing. But no, it'll be It'll be interesting anyway. What are these guys going to have to pay the Swift and Schneider or Swift and Knight drivers? Boy, that's a good question. But whether they can afford to pay them what they need to make any money to stay, that's going to be the question. What do you guys think? Is would you go work for Knight Swift? That's what I'm curious about. Let me know. Would you entertain them? I know, it probably helps if you live in Phoenix and now there are hardly any
Why or why not?
any other trucking companies. Why or why not would you go to work for a carrier that huge? Like, hell no, no way, no, no, hell no, hell no. Well, I think that's pretty unanimous across the board. And I think that's what these guys are going to find, that no one's going to want to work for them. Between the cheap pay, the bad reputation, the fact that they're one of 23,000 guys, they're just going to be a number. I don't. But yeah, this Blue Devil says Knight maybe, but yeah, maybe it all depends. Can you imagine there'll be an entire room full of kids with computers trying to track these trucks on screens, and you're just going to be a blip on the screen? And do you think that they're going to care if you're feeling sick and you want to go home? Not a hope in hell. Not when they've got incentive bonuses for the most loads moved in a month or something like that. So, and that's the problem. Trucking used to be people. People drove the trucks. And it's becoming a fact that now numbers drive the truck. And it just happens to be a guy with a pulse with a number. But the human factor has gone out of trucking. And you've never seen it more than in a merger like this. There's just so many drivers involved that you just know that they're not going to care about you one iota.
Trucking used to be fun, Dave.
Trucking did used to be fun. That was part of why I got in it. You could make a really good living. You could see the country. You could put in a long day, but still look forward to doing it again the next day. I think, with outfits like this, those days are going to be gone. I think if you're going to do any enjoyable trucking, it's going to have to be on your own terms. Because you work for a carrier like that, it'll be on their terms and nothing else. And I don't think I could work under a system like that. Not unless the money was huge. And the money's not going to be huge. Here's a guy, Kevin drove for Swift back a while ago, and he said he'd never do it again. Man, no, Swift drivers, they have a bad reputation, and it's been earned. It's taken them years to develop it, but they've managed to do it. Escort, you think the founders of these companies would have seen the future? All those guys see is the money. So that's what it's all about. They're not interested in anything else but the dollar. Yeah, a lot of these CEOs of trucking companies never drove a truck. Yeah,
I've seen one.
that's true. That's absolutely true. They inherited a small business from their dad or their grandfather, and they just buried themselves in the money.
The mega carriers brought politics onto our roads.
Yes, the mega carriers did bring politics onto our road. Never was a statement more true than that. And it's a sad state of affairs when you can mix politics and trucking, but now you can't talk about trucking without talking about the politics involved. That's the truth, and that's why we need guys like the OOIDA to try to cut the politics and the bullshit out of the trucking. Pardon my French. I love how they put the award-winning stickers on the back of their trailers. This guy has gone 6 weeks without crashing. I would rather drive an old Mack with a flatbed trailer and go to work as a salvage hauler, highwayman 204. Yeah, you've just got to get those little niches going, because I don't see much future for us hauling for these huge mega carriers anyway.
Why do people coming into the industry even get their CDL knowing they're not going to be home all month for $400 a week? Good question.
That is a good question, and I think guys still go out and get their CDL because they're hoping for something better than that. And there is better stuff than that out there and available. But the toughest battle these days is to get the training, to get the license, to get the experience, so a better carrier will hire you. And a lot of the times you end up at a place like Swift, that because you need them to get the experience, and you got to kind of put in your seat time till you can find something better. And that's a sad state of affairs, but that's kind of the way it's going.
Stick with the smaller companies.
Yeah, it's just I always made better money and got along better with smaller carriers when I was working for somebody else. They, you could walk into the office, complain to the owner, he knew your name if there was something wrong. You want direct contact with the guys running the place. Those guys at night, Swift, they're gonna have direct contact with like a driver manager who doesn't even know the owner's last name probably, or anything about him, or even how to find him in that office, so.
Mega carriers are just starter companies for drivers.
Yeah, that's right. Now, these days, mega carriers have become starter companies for drivers so they can get into a better spot later on in the industry.
Last comment there, Michael?
Yeah, that's interesting, Michael. Will they sell some of those tractors for the cash to help their cash position? I tend to believe that they're more interested in size than improving their cash position. I predict they'll try to find drivers for as many trucks as possible. That's my guess. That's part of the reason they've done it. They've wanted to be huge. That's the goal here. But how will it play out now? These guys, Swift has a canoe full of terminals all over the countryside. So these guys are predicting more terminal to terminal, shorter hauls. And if they manage to accomplish that, that'll be a good thing. They know that they're in trouble with these electronic logs coming in. Both Knight and Swift cite that as part of the reason that they're merging. It'll help them solve the problems with the incoming ELDs, because they're hoping to control and regulate their transit times basically by going from terminal to terminal. They know exactly how long that'll take for a guy, and he won't run out of hours. Then they'll just stick some city guy delivering it. And if he sits at the customers all day, oh well, it's not affecting the hours of service from a highway guy. So that's what they're going to try to do, is more terminal to terminal work. Now, as a driver, that could be a good thing if from the terminal that you've delivered to, they bring you back home again. But these mega carriers, the dispatch is controlled by kids with computers. They tend to go, well, we'll bebop them here, then we'll bebop them there, then we'll bebop them here. And as a result, the driver ping-pongs all over the countryside rather than coming home. If they can get into their heads that they send them from Phoenix to Salt Lake City and back to Phoenix again, and do that on a regular basis, that guy's going to be happy because he can predict his home time. And that's what truck drivers want these days. If they're not going to make huge money, at least they want to be home regularly. So if they can manage to do that, that'll be a feather in their cap. But my guess is, if they manage that kind of logistic coordination, by the time they manage it 10 years down the road, they won't have any guys driving for them. They'll have blown it by then. So yeah, James. It sounds like more regional workloads. That'll be the whole idea behind this. But they still got long distance customers, especially Swift is known for that. So they've got a lot of cross country freight. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that, whether they can jump it from terminal to terminal to terminal, like from Phoenix to Chicago. Where are they going to put the terminals? Oklahoma City and then in, or how are they going to work that? It'll be interesting to see if they can manage that. Yeah, talk about overcomplicating a simple concept, Matthew. Delivering freight. I know, that's exactly right, Matthew. It should be so simple, but I don't know. Trust them to complicate this. The world's getting to be a complicated place, and there's no need for it. And I think that's part of the problem. But
Someone has asked, what kind of companies did you work for? You can say you never worked for a mega carrier.
I never worked for a mega carrier. Before I got my own authority, I worked for a couple of small carriers and like 20, 30 truck companies, and they were really good because they all knew me and I got to know them, and we got into a flow where we could work together. I made money, they made money, everybody was happy, they knew I was treating their customers well. I did well with small carriers because they cared enough about how I was doing, whether I was making enough money, whether I was getting home enough, because they knew, they were smart enough to know if they took care of their guys would take care of them, and that's exactly what happened. And it got to be like one big family, we all worked together, everybody made money. And that's been lost with these mega carriers. I don't know how they're going to compensate for that. Man, these days trucking companies are all about money. That's true. That's what it is. It's all about money. And it's a shame the way they treat their people, because their people make up the company. The people make the company. The truck drivers make the trucking company. A lot of the office staff would like to forget that, but it's the fact of the matter. It's true. You've got to treat your guys well. You've got to treat them with respect and pay them well, or they're going to be gone.
Couple more minutes.
Okay. It's hard to keep drivers if the pay isn't right. The Mexican. Exactly. I don't go to work because I like it. Like, I enjoy the driving. But at the end of the day, I'm there for the paycheck. So if the paycheck just doesn't cut it when you put in a hard week and you look at the numbers on your paycheck and it doesn't cut it, you're not going to stay long. You're going to look for something better. No matter how much you enjoy the driving, you need to be able to pay your bills. It's funny how that works. But these trucking companies, if you're gone all week and you take home $400, you've blown your brains out. You've wasted your time. You might as well go do construction and be home every night. So,
1 minute.
the biggest problem is these mega carriers lack efficiency. That's something, efficiency is going to be what Knight Swift is going to have to achieve to survive. It's make it or break it for these guys now. And that's right. It's going to have to be efficient and cost effective, or they're just going to go down the toilet in one big flame. And being the size that they are, when they decide if they're going to go, they're going to go fast. So it'll be interesting to see how it turns out. The proof is in the pudding. Yeah, micromanagement will kill them. Flat bucket trucking, they micromanage the thing. Everybody will leave. Everybody will go nuts and then quit. Well,
Do a summary.
I think that's all I'm going to spout off about for tonight. I've enjoyed your comments coming in. Thank you very much for that. It's interesting to see that we all as drivers are pretty much of the same opinion on this merger, that nobody is interested in working for them. And I hope they're sitting in their boardroom in Phoenix and watching this and going, holy crap, we never thought of that. and the realization's going to dawn on them. So in the meantime, have a good night. Take care. Keep the rubber side down. I'll see you on the back haul. I've enjoyed talking with you about this, and I've enjoyed getting your takes and opinions.
Until next time.
Until next time, drive safe and have a good night.